Guys, in this video we are going to learn about query parameters, and we are going to learn how we can use query parameters in our React applications to build the search bar that can search through any kind of data. So here in this project we have a list of students here on the screen, and we have displayed the name of each student in a card component. So basically how this application works is, if in the search bar I'm just going to search any name and hit enter, it's going to filter that name from the entire list. And you can have a look at the URL, how it's changing after I create the filter on my data. So if I remove the filter here, the URL is going to be /students, and as soon as I search something and hit enter, the URL is changing and it's adding a query parameter here, that is name is equal to John. So in this application I can also filter the data directly using the URL. For example, after the students, if I start a query parameter and search for name is equal to Daisy and hit enter, it's going to search the name in the data whatever I am passing in my query parameters. So this video is all about learning how to use query parameters in your React application, and we are going to be using React router DOM to access the query parameters in our application and build these kind of search filters. So guys, I have a new React application running here on my local host 3001. I also have a sample application that's running on localhost 3000. So we will try and replicate this application into our new React application. So before we start building this project, we are going to install all the required packages that we are going to need in this application. So in this application I'm using this search bar and the card components from Material UI. So I'm going to open a new tab and search for Material UI install, and here on the first link, I'll open Material UI installation documentation, and I'll copy this command from here, go back to my React application and install Material UI into my application. So Material UI has been installed into my application. I'll clear the terminal, and we are also going to need one more package in this application, that is React router DOM. So I'm just going to install React router DOM in this application. So guys, now we have all the packages that we are going to need in this application. So I'm just going to remove all the default code that we have here and put hello world in this application. I'll go back to my browser to see everything is working fine. So now we can start building this application from scratch. So guys, in this hello world application, under the source, I'm just going to create a new folder, and this is going to be components. And under the components, I'm just going to create a new component that is going to be student.js. And here I can quickly create a component student. Now I'll go to my app.js and import my student component here. So now we have one component here. In the next step, we are just going to implement React router DOM into this application. So I'm just going to make some imports from React router DOM, and I'm going to import browser router from React router DOM, and I'm also going to import routes and a route component from React router DOM. So I can name the browser router as router here while making my imports. So here in the application, I'm just going to replace my div tag with the router component, and under the router component we are going to create routes, and under the routes we can create a route. We can specify the path name on this route, and that is going to be /students, and the element that we are going to display on this route is going to be student component, which we have already imported in this application here. So now let's save this and go back to our application in the browser. So here in the browser, if I go to the route/students, I'm able to see my student component here. So it looks like React router DOM is working fine, and now we can start working on this student component. So guys, here in the student component, I'm just going to first create a list of students that I'm going to display in my application. So I've created a list of students here, which is an array with the name of all the students that we are going to display in this application. And here under the return, we can start building our layout. So I'm just going to remove the student here, and on the div tag, we can put some styling. So on this div tag, display is going to be flex. We are going to justify all the content to center, and we are also going to align items to center on this div tag. And here at the top, I'm just going to import some components from Material UI. So from Material UI, we are going to import the card component, and we are also going to need the text field from Material UI to build a search bar at the top. So in this div component, let's build a search bar using a text field component. And under the text field component, we are going to create another div tag. And in this div tag, I'm just going to loop over my list, which is here, which is an array of students. I'm just going to say list.map. So for every item in the list, I can return a card component here. And under the card component is going to be another div component, which is going to display the item. And on this div component, we can put some styling. Let's say that we are going to make the height of this div component to be 200 pixels. We can also make the width to be 200 pixels. Display on this component can be flex again, and let's indent the code here properly so we can see clearly all the CSS. So display is going to be flex. We are going to justify all the content to center, and we are also going to align all the items on this div tag to center. So if I save this, go back to my application. So as of now, I'm just able to see my search bar, but for some reason I'm not able to see my list of students here. So let's go back and fix that. So if I go back to my React application again, so here under the map, to see the list of students, I just have to return the card from this map function. So if I cut all this logic and put it inside the return and save this, go back to my application again. So now I'm able to see the search bar, and I'm also able to see the list of students, but we can see that the layout is really messed up. So we are going to fix that. So here on the main div tag, if I make my flex direction to column, this is going to fix one problem. And if I go back now, the text field has come at the top and all the cards are here at the bottom, but all the cards are aligned vertically here. If we make display as flex on the div tag, that is a container on all of these cards, that is going to fix that problem, and all the cards are going to appear in the row. So if I look at this HTML here, so all the card components are enclosed within this div tag. So here on this div tag, I'm just going to put some styling, and if I make the display as flex, I should be able to see all the card components in a single row. So that's it. They are all aligned in a single row now. So now all we have to do is put some spacing between this text field and the card components, and also we are going to try and move this into center of the page. So here on the main div tag, I can put a margin top to be 5%, and let's align this code properly again to see all the CSS. And here, to create a gap between the text field and the card component, I'm just going to put a property that is row gap. If I mention a row gap to be 10 pixels and save this, so this is going to create a gap between the text field and the card components. Now we also need some spacing within these card components. So let's go to the div tag that is enclosing all the card components here. So here I can put a gap of 1%. So if I do that, now all the card components are going to have spacing between them. Let's increase the font size on the name so we can see clearly on the screen. So here in this div tag, I'm just going to increase my font size. That is going to be 40 pixels. So if I go back now, my layout is looking good. and we have a search bar, we have all the students here. So now in the next step we have to implement the search here. So if I search something here and hit enter, I should be able to filter that name from this entire list. So guys, this is where we start learning about query parameters. So to create this search filter here, we are going to be using query parameters in this project. For example, now I am on the URL/students. So what I'm going to do to filter the data from this entire list is I'm just going to pass a query parameter here, and that is going to be name. And here I can pass the name that I want to filter from the list. Let's say I want to filter the John from the entire list. So I'm just going to pass the name as John. So if I go to this URL should show me the name that I'm trying to filter with the help of my URL. Let's have a look at the original application. So on the original application, I'm here on the /students, but if I search name is equal to John, it is going to filter the name John here on my list. So in order to create a filter from the data, I should have some way to access what are the query parameters which are present in my URL within my application. So let's go to the React application and try to access this query parameter using React router DOM. So if I go back to my application, and here I'm just going to make some import from React router DOM. To access the query parameters, we are going to use a useLocation hook from React router DOM. So that's the hook that is going to help us to access our URL and the query parameters within this URL. So if I import a useLocation here, and here in my component I can create a variable that is going to be location with the help of useLocation. So let's console log this location to see what exactly it is. So if I console log this location here, go back to my browser and inspect it, go to the console. So here in the console I should be able to see what is the location. So location has basically two properties, that is path name, and it also has a search parameter that is having all the query parameters that are being passed on the students. Let's say that I remove all the query parameters for a moment and refresh it. So in that case my search parameter is going to be empty, and if I pass any query parameter here, so my search field is going to be updated with that query parameter. So what we want is we need to access the name that user is trying to search with the help of URL. So to have access to this query parameter, that is name, I'm just going to write some more logic here. So here I can say my search parameters are going to be new URL search parameters, and here I can pass the location dot search. So this function which is coming from the React router DOM is going to help us have access to the query parameters. Let's console log search parameters. Now we have created this variable. Now console log it. I can just comment the location for now. If I save this and go back to my application, so now if I refresh it, so here I will be able to see an object that is URL search parameters. So now what we want is we want to get the name out of this object. So in order to access the name out of this, what I can do is I can console log search parameters dot get name. So this name has to be string. So if I save this and go back to my application, now you can see that it's console logging John here because I'm passing name as John. So if I pass name as Daisy and refresh the application, I'm able to see that Daisy is being logged into my console. So the main idea is we are able to access the query parameter name into this application now. Because we are able to access this name, now I should be able to filter my list based on the whatever query parameter is being passed in the URL. So here after the list, I'm just going to filter my list based on name query parameter. So here I'm just going to be using, if my search parameters has a query that is name, then I'm just going to filter that name out of my list. So list dot filter. So all the items in the list, I'm just going to filter the item that is equal to that query parameter, that is name. So basically if I'm passing name as a John, I'm making a filter here that filter John out of this entire list and reassign it to the list. So if I save this and go back to my application, now if I refresh it, I'm able to see only the name that is being filtered here. Let's say that if I remove all the query parameters, now I am able to see all the names because I have a logic here that only if name exists in my query parameters, then only it's going to filter the list. So let's test it again with some other name. So if I pass something like name is equal to Mary, so now it's going to filter Mary based on the query parameter. My URL is already able to search based on the name. Now what I want is, I want to implement the same filter on my search bar. So guys, to implement the same filter on the search bar, all I have to do is when somebody is typing something into the search bar and hitting enter, I'm just going to redirect the user to the filter URL that is already working with the query parameter name is equal to whatever user has typed in the search bar. And by doing that, I'll be able to implement the same filter on the search bar. So guys, here on the text field, we are going to put some event listeners, and that is going to be on key down. On key down, we are going to call a function that is going to be handle search, and we can define the handle search function here above the return statement. So here I can create a function that is going to be handle search, and it's going to take a event as a parameter. Because we are using a event listener that is key down, every key on the keyboard has something called key code, which we can log here and see. I can log event.key code to see all the key codes that my keyboard has. So if I go to my application and in the search field, if I try to type something, you can see that all the key codes are being logged here. But I want the search to really happen when somebody press enter. So key code for the enter is 13. So that's what we are going to use here. So if I go back to my application, so here I can say that if my event.key code is equal to 13, which is a user pressing enter key, and the value on the search bar, that is event.target.value, is not empty, I'm just going to redirect the user here. So I'm just going to console log redirect user to new URL. So let's see if it's working. So if I save this, go back to my application, I'm just going to type John here and press enter. So we can see that our function is working fine. On enter, we are logging redirect user to new URL. So that's what we are going to do here. We are going to redirect the user to the filter URL, and to redirect the user, we are going to use another hook from React Router DOM that is going to be useNavigate. And here under this function, we can create a navigate variable using useNavigate, and using this navigate variable, we should be able to navigate the user to any URL we want. So basically we want the user to go to the filter URL when somebody is typing something in the search and pressing enter. I'm just going to redirect the user to localhost 3001. That's where our application is running /students. But this time I'm going to redirect the user to the URL with the query parameter, and this query parameter name is going to take the value whatever user has typed in the search bar, that is going to be event.target.value. And after we have redirected the user, we are also going to reload the page by using window.location.reload. I have to remove my localhost 3001 and just mention /students with the query parameter names. Let's go to /students and type John here and hit enter. So now we are redirecting to the right URL, that is a filter URL for John. And if I remove this and go back to the students again, now this time I'm just going to filter Ashok and hit enter. So it's redirecting me to the URL with the query parameter based on whatever user has typed in the search bar. So now basically I'm able to filter based on the search bar, and I'm also able to filter using the URL directly. So the last thing we want to do is when I apply a filter, when I search something in the search bar and hit enter, It's taking me to the search URL. I also need a button to clear all the filters. So how can I clear all the filters? All the filters can be cleared by just redirecting the user back to /students. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to add a button here, and that is going to be clear filters. And on click of a button, I'm just going to redirect the user back to /students, which is going to clear all the filters. So let's create a button here. So I can import button from material UI. And after my text field, I'm just going to create a button which is going to say clear filters. Here I'm just going to put a event listener that is going to be on click handle clear filters. So we are going to create this function above the return statement. So here after handle search, I can create handle clear filters. So basically when somebody is going to click on handle clear filters, I'm just going to use my navigate function again, and this time I'm going to redirect the user to /students, and again I'm just going to say window.location.reload to reload the page. So if I save this, go back to my application, now I have a clear filters button here. So let me try and search a name that is going to be Dave and hit enter. Now the Dave is filtered, but if I clear filters, it's going to clear all the filter back again. So let's try with another name. We can search Mary, and if I clear filters, this is going to clear all the filters. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video about the query parameters and how to build filters using query parameters. So if you found a value in this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.